Well, hello everyone, it's Dave with Beyond Guitars back again, and today I have to kind of go back on my word. I said I was going to do the neck next, and I'm going to say that today because I ended up with a lot of banjo parts on my workbench, and when I was through polishing all the metal parts, I thought, these are all in the way. What am I going to do with them? So what we're going to do right now is assemble the pot. So we're going to put the pot assembly together and adjust the head. We're going to get that all done quick as I can, and we'll get through this real quick right after this. Well, this is one of those things, I'm sure if you ask 10 people who work on banjos how they go together, you're going to get 10 answers. Well, all I can give you is mine, and I will show you how I do this. But I do have a particular way of setting them up and putting the head on, so I'll explain all about that. Now, to start with, we begin with the rim. This is the heart and soul of the banjo pot, and we have two ends with holes drilled in them, and we need to determine which end the neck attaches to and the opposite end the tailpiece would attach to. Now, I happen to know that this scrape here was due to the tone ring that has the tone ring has a hole drilled in it, and when they did that, they left kind of a burr on the inside of the tone ring here at the edge right there, and it gouged the wood. So so that's the side. I took note of that. I did notice that, and so I know that this is going to be the spot where the hole in the tone ring was. But a couple of other clues. You might mark it or put a little sticker or post-it note on it or something to tell you before you take it apart. But most banjos also will have a sticker on the inside of the rim. You'll see it from this side, which is the back. And that'll be on the bottom when it's in playing position. So for me, with the neck on this side, the sticker would be down here. So if you're confused and you have a sticker on the inside of your banjo, like most do, it will be on the bottom with the neck on your left in standard playing position. But we do know because of that mark and the fact that the opposite side has the imprint of the tailpiece bracket on it, it's not a question for me. I know which side is which. But that's important to know. The tailpiece or the coordinator rod that comes down to the bottom end of the banjo at the rim does not go all the way through. So the coordinator rod here doesn't come all the way through, and the one at the bottom does, and that's where the tailpiece attaches. And so the opposite end of that's our neck side, and the opposite end of this tone ring will not have a hole in it. It doesn't have to allow the rod to pass through, but the neck end does need a hole in it because the neck has two studs that pass through, goes this way, that pass through the hole. Beginning with the neck end where the hole goes, that'll be over here. I'm going to put the flange on, which has a designated spot also for the neck. It's got a cutout for the neck, so that's going to go up there at that end. Now I've got it face down. The squared off end is the tone ring, so that's the front, and this is the back. And so the back of the flange is not polished. It's not finished. It's not the pretty side. So the pretty side goes down. And there we have it. Now, it's good to make sure that this is centered in these holes because that's going to collide with the neck. If it's not, the neck is in a fixed position where those holes are. So what I will usually do is go ahead and fit the neck through the holes temporarily just to adjust the distance between the two sides of this flange. So the flange has a little gap on each side of the neck so it doesn't interfere. And you need to square it up so you know that that's, to my eye, that's about where it goes. So that'll be satisfactory for the neck. And now I don't want to touch the flange and move it. It isn't fixed. It can slide around. But the next step then is to put the brackets in. And these little brackets that I was so fearful of, being that most of the screws that I've encountered are next to impossible to get out. And this one wasn't that way. I'm putting them back in now. So we'll bust through this as quick as we can here. Okay, now that I have those brackets in, they do put a little pressure on the flange, but there's really nothing keeping it from spinning around or moving a little bit. Once you have the hooks in, of course, it's going to be really smashed in there and we can't move it. So we need to make sure, and if you like, double check. I know it didn't move, but you just want to make sure that the flange is centered at the neck holes there on the rim. So we're looking at the back right now, but we're going to flip it over to the front. And the next step here is going to be the placement of the tone ring. So I've got that here, and again, that hole in the tone ring. Yikes, I just caught my finger on that. It is sharp. It was drilled too close to the edge and kind of busted out the bottom, but that's not a problem, except that it's sharp, so I have to be careful with that. Now I'm looking at the hole over here, make sure it lines up, and then push it on down. And that's nice. That Renaissance wax made that a little smoother than taking off. Now I'm going to take a regular Phillips head screwdriver and just put it through this hole here and make sure that things are lined up. And that should adjust the tone ring a little bit if it's not. So we'll try it this way. There we go, just a little wiggle. I get the screwdriver through. So now I know the tone ring is well lined up with the hole in the rim. So our neck is going to go on, and we can always test that again if you feel it's necessary, and that goes on like this. Yeah, everything looks good from my seat. Okay, now next is to put the head on. And the head, sometimes these heads can be tight, and there are different sized heads, and sometimes you'll run into a banjo tone ring that's an odd size, but they do make heads in 1/8 inch increments. Now I got this head from Stuart McDonald. They told me it is a Weather King, which is the brand made by Remo, and so that's a genuine Remo Weather King head we're putting on here, even though it doesn't have a logo. Now in the case that your banjo head is a little difficult to put on, but it is the right size, assuming that, I will usually put the rim on, or the tension hoop on, and just push down to put it on. So I'll use the tension hoop, I'll stand up, use my body weight to really push it on. This one's not terribly hard to put on, but that's just a demonstration of how I do that. But that's something I do even if the head isn't too tight. Now keep in mind that the holes in the flange are lined up with notches in the tension hoop. So the tension hoop has a particular way to go. Also using the neck position as our spot. We've got notches in the hoop for the hooks, of course, but they're evenly spaced except for at the neck, and that's a wider space that always goes at the top here at the neck. Now what I can do, now that I've got the flange on, I can look at the hole in the flange and eyeball it so that the notch in the hoop is directly above it. And that's what I just did here from my point of view. All of them will line up with a hole in the flange. So we've got a notch and a hole for every hook. Now, the next step for me is kind of the beginning of how we adjust the head. And we start out by us actually installing it in a particular way. And what I like to do is put in just a few hooks, not all of them, but I'm going to space these every fourth position. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to put another hook in, and I'll work my way around just putting in those spaced out hooks, so I don't have too many. I want to keep life kind of simple at this stage. So as I go around, I'm going to put the nuts on. The nuts, by the way, on this style, they have a round, kind of a ball end, and then the opposite end is kind of flat. And the flat side goes against the flange because you want the wide bearing flat side of the nut to bear against the flange. So that's the way I'll put them all on, and just till they don't turn anymore with my fingers. No tools, no wrenches, and by all means, no electric screwdrivers or anything of the sort. Okay, now I don't really have a rule as far as how many I put in or how far apart they are, just as long as I have them fairly well evenly distributed around and I don't have to bother with all of the hooks at this point. So that's how I begin. Now I'm going to seat the head, and what I'm going to do is let the head kind of seat itself by pushing down once again on the tension hoop. And we can inspect once again just to make sure the hooks are vertical and that they're lining up well with the hole and the notch above them, and that way the tension hoop is lined up. You see, we can still turn it because there's no tension on it. So I'll put it right where the hooks look straight up and down, and I'm going to push this head down again to let it seat itself. I'm not using the counting the threads or anything like that in the hooks. I don't want the hooks designating where the head goes. I want the head to tell me where it likes to sit, and get it down there just by putting some manual pressure on it and then going around and bringing these back up to zero tolerance, that is, touching the flange. Not pulling, I'm not using a wrench, obviously. Now I always get some looseness on those when I push it down the first couple of times. So I'm going to do that again. At least the hooks now won't allow the head to come back up. They're not pulling it down. The head is finding its own place when I push down, and then I bring these back up, and that did loosen them up a little bit again. So we just make sure they're back to zero tolerance, back to zero. Okay, so now really there's no tension on the head, but it is down, and it's where it likes to be. It has decided for me where it wants to go. So 2 or 3 times we push it down and bring these nuts back to zero, and that's our starting point for setting up the head. But right now I'm just going to fill in the rest of the spaces between the hooks I've got in here, get all the spaces occupied by a hook. I'll put all the nuts on and bring them up to zero again the same way with no torque. I'm just going to get them, I wouldn't even call it finger tight because they're not tight at all. They're just bring them up to zero where they're touching the flange. Okay, I got all of the hooks installed, and nickel is a relatively soft metal, and it has made my fingers a little bit dirty from the metal. So before I go touching the head and getting black fingerprints all over it, I'm going to give my hand a little wipe just to get some of that off of there. I can tell you how I clean the heads though. If they do get dirty, it's not a problem, but I like to try and prevent it. Now I'm just going to go around, make sure these are all at 0 once again, including the ones I put on first. Just bringing them up to the flange, and then I'm going to do another push down on it just to make sure they're all even Steven, just where I want them. And we'll see if that loosened any of them up. Slightly, yep. That brought them up just a little bit. And the next thing I want to do is tap them all a little bit to make sure all the hooks aren't jammed in their little holes there where they go through. Because just as I had to hammer some of them out with a little light tap, I'm going to do the same just to make sure they're all down. So I've got the plastic side, and I'll just tap each hook a little bit. Still no real tension on the head. I'm just making sure the hooks are all down, and back to 0 they go. So it's real important to me to get this in a seated position before I add any tension on the hooks, because the hooks apply a tremendous amount of force, and they will just force the head to go whichever way they want. But I like for the head to tell me where it wants to be. So I've checked them all, and that's where we begin our adjustments for the head. Now what I do is 4 passes minimum, but usually up to 6 or 7. Just kind of depends on how it goes. But the first 2 times around, we'll flip it over, and here's where we start our adjustments. And you need a banjo key in order to do this, or you could call it a drum key. Same thing. This one's a 1/4 inch, and we will begin here at the neck notch, which is the easy place to remember. Now, some people will make a crisscross and do this kind of diamond pattern. I lose my place doing that, honestly. So there's nothing wrong with it. That's absolutely fine. Hey, there's an argument for that being superior. I don't know most banjo repair people do that, but I don't anymore. I've tried it. I lose my place more often than anything, and then I just figure I've just kind of blown it because I'm not sure where I was. And I do this in so many gradual steps that I don't think it's necessary. But if that's how you like to do it, that's fine. So we're going to start here at this neck notch. Easy place to remember. And I'm going to bring the wrench around 1/2 turn. So if I have it in this position, for instance, or wherever it begins, I want the outer or the opposite wing of the key to end up where the first end of the key is. So we're going to do that on every single one. I'm going to do this twice. And by the way, once you start torquing these in like this, the adjacent ones will loosen up. You can see that one and this one have become loose. I'm not going to zero these out anymore because I already know that they started out life equal. But now I just want to give them an equal turn. So we're going to make sure that the nut is down the same amount on all of them. So I'm trying not to turn the nut, even though it's completely loose, just by putting the wrench on. And that's where it wanted to start. So I'm going to bring this around to very close to where it was. And that's the way I'm going to go around 1/2 turn on every single one. Okay, we're through with the first revolution around the head and around the pot, and I'm going to do it again. Another half a turn. That will be a full turn, but incrementally. That's the idea, is to get them all equal in every sense that we can. Now I'm getting a little bit of tension on it now, but not much. All right, we're probably getting a little bit of tone in the head, but it's very loose. As I mentioned in one of my other videos, I was explaining in the disassembly that these are constructed like a drum, but a lot more hooks. And not only do they bring it down more evenly, but they apply a lot more tension on these heads. And it is possible to burst a head and just apply so much force that the head bursts, it rips. Right? You know, I've never done that. I've never actually ripped a head, but I've heard about it, and it sounds like a gunshot, they say. I never want to go there. So I'm real careful about tension, and at this point, we're going to start now with our tension adjustment, which is a little different than the two half turns. So now I'm going to start in the same place, and I'm going to give it a little bit of pressure. And how should I explain this? I was thinking about maybe taking a grape or something and demonstrating how much force I'm putting on it, maybe not quite bursting the grape with the pressure of my thumb. So I'm adding a little bit of torque to these. I can't tell you what the value is, but I'm doing it by feel, and I'm only adding a little bit, not very much, but I'm not using the angle anymore. I'm not saying, hey, a half a turn, even though it may be a half a turn, it may be only a quarter turn on some of these. You know, sometimes in the last adjustment, it's not at all, or it's quite a bit. Just depends on how far that needs to go to get the same tension on it. So I'm not worried about clocking this in a degrees, or I just want the right amount of pressure. So this is just from experience, you know, just a little bit. I mean, I'm not wrenching down on this hard at all. It's quite light, and I doubt if I would even burst a grape if it were in my fingers. Now these toward the end, close to where I started, require a lot more. What I'm deciding right now to do is just go around and bring them up to the same tension. So I'm going to go around twice, not adding any further torque. I just want to make them all equal with the same pressure I had before, so no increase above my last adjustment. Okay, so far I've gone around this 3 times. I think I'll be going around probably 6 times before I'm finished, and that's just the preliminary adjustment. The final adjustment I do when the banjo is put together, so I can't do that today. I'm going to start again now at the beginning. We should get some nice pitch on this now. Sounds like a drum at this point. It's going to sound really high when we're through, because a banjo head is a lot tighter than a drum. But we're going to start again. This time, now I'm going to add a little bit. I'm going to just feel like maybe I will smash that grape this time. Maybe not quite, but just about where you think a grape might burst is right where I'm stopping. How can I put that into words? It's just a feel, but it's kind of subjective, I suppose, without a torque gauge of any kind. But I'm just feeling like I might burst a grape with this amount of pressure. Yeah. And mostly I'm feeling it with my thumb. That's kind of where I'm I'm concentrating on with my mind. A little more tension on this. That means that no matter whether these came loose or not, I'm going to turn them all some, because none of them were as tight as I'm making them now. Well, I'm anticipating I may go around this 7 times. I'm on my 4th, but I haven't really evened them out yet. I haven't actually finished tensioning it yet. I would say it's probably in the low side for banjo playing. It could be used this way, but it's still a little on the low side. For a open back banjo, I probably would definitely not go any tighter than this. This would be where I'd stop. For a master tone banjo pot, I would definitely go higher. So I'm going to go around to see if any of these loosened up. I'm going to remember the amount of pressure I put on them this last time and just go back up to that. So this is equaling them out once again. So it may be that some of these I don't turn at all. That one doesn't require much. That one was held pretty well. Yeah, these down toward the bottom didn't really loosen up. That's about, yeah, needed a little more. As I come back up on the other side, they feel a little looser. Kind of interesting. So they should be pretty equal at this point. Now that might be a good place to leave it, but I know that I will be tighter than that when I'm done. A little bit tighter than that. If the banjo were together, the bridge would be pushing down and probably sagging a little bit too much. The pressures are pretty high on a banjo. So I'm going to just add a little bit this time again. Now I feel like I'm probably bursting the grape every time. Because a banjo like this has so many hooks, their cumulative effect is really a lot of pressure on the head, or I should say tension on the head. So they should be up to pitch, and that's pretty much what I like to hear, that nice sharp ping. So I'm done tensioning the head. I'm not going to add any more tension. I am going to go around one more time just to, make sure they're all equal again. And some of these I may turn, and some of them may be rock solid where they are. All right, then, that's a lot of tedious nut turning, but we're all through, at least for this stage. And at the next stage, I would have to have the neck on, the strings on, and the bridge, and I'd be able to play it and listen to the tone of the instrument. But right now, that's a good high tension. I'd say it's about medium right now. So we will leave it there. I like to get these heads on early on anyway so that they can sit here while I'm doing other things and get the head to stretch out while I have it. Hopefully it won't stretch anymore by the time the customer gets it. So it will be all adjusted and settled in. And the heads do settle in. So that'll be good to have it for a little while beforehand. So we are good to go. And, to answer the question about setup and tone, you listen to the pitch of the head. I have the worst time with that. I just can't do it. I've been doing this for 50 years now. Actually, this is my 50th year working with banjos. But you can hear the tone changing depending on how the resonator is on, or if it's against a head or against a table, or is the bridge going to be on with the strings and the pressure, and what note do you really want, especially with an arch top? I mean, how are you going to know? I listen to the tone more than anything. I just can't. There are too many overtones in a banjo head for me to even try to pick out a pitch. It just doesn't work for me. So I play the instrument. Now, I've never used a drum dial, but I bought one, and I'm going to use one. So maybe we'll learn together here. I've been tensioning them by hand for most of my life, since I was about 12 years old is when I started, and I've kind of got the feel for it now, but I want to see how the drum dial, what the drum dial says about the way I do it, and I'll see what I say about what the drum dial does it. So drum dial and I will talk to each other, and we'll see how this banjo setup goes according to each method. But, you know, as far as I know, the most important thing really is that the tension is the same all the way around. And that's my goal from the very, very beginning. So, we are all together, and this thing is looking fantastic. What a nice, bright, shiny banjo we have now. Banjo pot. I'll get my little fingerprints off of it and put it away. We're going to put this away. I swear, next time, I'm not lying to you, we're going to address this neck on the next video. We're going to get to it. I've been holding back, so we haven't done anything with it yet. Be sure to like and subscribe, and then you can join me for the next video where we hit the neck and we start doing all the things it needs. And thanks for being here with me at Beyond Guitars.